By the end of this video, we're going to get our NPCs animated, but this won't be any simple animation video, oh no. We're going to be using one animation controller and set of animations for our NPCs and our froggy player. Why do that, you ask? Because it's easier. And also, say you don't want to play as a frog anymore and you quite like the look of that princess girl, we can drag one simple asset into our Sprite Library slot, and now we're playing as a princess. Hello? That's so cool. Fully animated. I didn't have to do anything. Oh hey, that old man's looking kind of cool. Let's switch to him. Well, that was easy. That's so customizable. Get excited and let's check it out. So right now, our player is animated. He has a walking animation and he idles in these different directions. But our NPCs are not animated. If I go to Window, Animation, then Animator, and click on our player, we can see he has an idle and walking animation set in this controller. Now we could copy and paste this out for each one of our NPCs and recreate these blend trees, which is very tedious and would take up a lot of our time. So I'm going to show you a cool way to reuse our player's blend tree. So we're going to use a Sprite Resolver component on our player and our NPCs, which as you can see pulls information from the Sprite Library asset set in the Sprite Library component. So inside my sprites folder, I'm going to create a new folder, which I'll call Sprite Library. And inside this folder, I'm going to go create 2D Sprite Library asset. I'll name our first one player, so we can first set up our player to see how this is done, and then be able to easily make some for our NPCs to reuse our animator. So if we click on Open in Sprite Library Editor, here we want to add categories. So we'll add a new one and call it idle, and another one, call it walk. From here, what I want to do is in idle, drag in our idling frog sprites, so I have those set up here, and for walk we'll drag in our walk sprites. Very easy. If we click save, our sprite library is now set up for our player. So if I click on my player now, I can add a component of a sprite library, drag in my player sprite library, and we can see these all appear. Then I'll add another component, which is a sprite resolver. And we can see these idle and walking sprites all set up inside here too. So now we want to set up our animations to use references to the sprite library. So let's go Window, Animation, Animation. I'm going to drag this down the bottom in our game view. And for each one of these, we're going to go through each animation and reset up our clips. But basically, instead of this sprite, you're going to want to delete this. Click Add Property, right click on Sprite Resolver, and click Add Properties. If we zoom out at the 1 minute mark, this automatically adds in some details for us. I just want to delete those. Click back on this first frame. Now as I have in my Sprite Resolver this first icon selected, for idle down, he's facing downwards. If you clicked these other ones, it would change his sprite. So if I press play and test it, yep, he's facing down. Let's go to walk down so I can show you how to add multiple frames using this Sprite Resolver. So we're going to want to change our Sprite Resolver to be walk. And just before I delete these sprite frames, we'll take a look and see we place these every 15 milliseconds. So I'm going to recreate that. So now I'll press Ctrl A and delete these, click Add Property, right click on Sprite Resolver and click Add Properties. Delete this one, automatically put in at 1 second. And now we've got our first frame, which is fine, him facing downwards. For our second frame, I want to go to 15 milliseconds, click the record button, and then click on my next walking frame in my Sprite Resolver. Move to the next 15 seconds, so that will be 30, and click the next sprite in my Sprite Resolver. Go to 45, next sprite, and then at the 1 second mark, so 60, I'll go back to my first sprite again. So we've got a nice little loop. If I press play, you can see he's doing his walk and it's using this Sprite Resolver. So I can unclick this record button now. Now the next step would be going through all of these animations and setting them all up, which we will do. But to show you an example really quick, I'm going to go to our sprite libraries, right click and create a new 2D Sprite Library asset and make one for our old man. If I go in Open Sprite Editor, we'll do the same where we go idle and walk. Then in my old man sprites folder, for idle, I'll drag in idle, and for walk, I'll drag in my walk. Click save. Now if I go to my player and drag in my old man sprite library, you'll see this automatically changes all of our walk animations. So if I now press play on our walk down, our old man is magically walking, and this is automatically selecting the correct sprites for our old man's walk animation. It's magic, so easy. So all these animations you'll only have to set up once. So you can imagine in code, you want to switch back to your little froggy. You didn't want to be an old man anymore. You'd simply change the reference from your old man sprite library back to your player sprite library. And now all your animations change with it. So cool. Let's go through two more together. So I'll go idle left. We can delete these, add property, right click sprite resolver, add properties, zoom out so you get rid of that 1 second mark, press record and select our frog facing left. Oh, I'm in the walk one. You don't want that. You want to be in idle and then select your froggy facing left. You can press play to test this out. Cool, looks good. We'll go to walk left now. I'll delete these. They're all spaced out at 15 still. Add property, right click sprite resolver, add properties, delete the 1 second. Go to the beginning, press record and go walk left. Click the first sprite, walk left, next frame, 30 seconds, next frame, 45, next frame. And then at the 1 second mark, I go back to the first frame. Test that out. He's walking great. Again, if I switch this to be the old man one, we can see he's walking to the left. Oh, it's magic. Isn't that fun? Cool. Now, movie magic. I'll speed this up. This one animating bit is tedious, but you'll only have to do it once now. So much better than before, right? Cool, now that's all done. Let's press play. I can test my walking still works. Yep, he's looking good. His idles are all the right way around. And just for fun, let's change to an old man. Whoa, that's a fast old man. Look at him go. But cool, that's not what we came here for. We came here to animate our NPCs. So let's put our player back. And since we've got him set up, let's do our old man first. So NPC old man, open this up and get to our NPC object. In here we want our sprite library and our sprite resolver. We'll drag in old man. This is all set up. And then we want an animator. So all we need to do is fill in this animator controller. Inside my animation folder, I've got my player controller, which we're going to be reusing. In future, if you have specific animations for just NPCs or just your player, you could simply copy and paste this controller and create one specific for your NPCs. Right now, for the sake of the tutorial, all we've got is walking and idling, but in future, I may split them out. Cool, and now of course, this wouldn't be a Unity tutorial without some coding, so we need to still set our booleans when our NPC is moving inside our animator, so that the animations actually update. So let's open up our WaypointMover Script by double-clicking on this. And at the top here, we're going to want a private animator, which I'll just call animator, so that in our start, we can go animator equals get component animator and have a reference to this of our NPC. So of course, in our update, when our game is paused or we are waiting, we're going to want to set our animator dot set bool and pass in is walking to be false, since we know our NPC won't be moving at this point. And down in our move to waypoint, to be able to set what direction we're moving in, we're going to need to store a vector2 direction, which will equal brackets target dot position, take away our transform dot position, and then outside the brackets type dot normalized. So we know this is the direction we're moving in, and with that direction, we can go animator dot set float, pass in input x, comma, direction dot x, and then we can duplicate this line by pressing Ctrl D and change this to be input y, direction dot y. Then we're also going to want to go animator dot set bool and set our is walking again, but this time to be our direction dot magnitude greater than 0f. Cool, and then one more place down in our wait at waypoint. Underneath is waiting to be true. When we're waiting, we're not going to be walking, so we can set is walking to false. So cool, let's test this out. Back in Unity, if we press play, we can now see our old man walking left and right. When he idles, he faces the front. And in fact, this will always be the case because we haven't inputted our last input X and Y. Now I've done this on purpose in case when your NPC stops, you do want them to face the front. Otherwise, he'll default to facing to whichever way he was last facing. So he'll stand still and face right or left. I kind of like the look in a 2D game when they stop and they face the front automatically. So you can leave your script like this, or at the top of our waypoint mover, we're going to want two new variables, a private float for last input X, and duplicate this as we're also going to want a last input Y. Then down in our move to waypoint, before we call move towards, we can say if direction dot magnitude greater than 0f, our last input x equals our direction dot x, and our last input y equals our direction dot y. Then when we're down waiting in our waypoint, so when our NPC is idling, before we yield, we'll want to go animator dot set float last input x to be last input x, and animator set float last input y is last input y. Cool, and of course we also set is walking to false up when our game is paused. So let's copy and paste these two lines from below up to under the set ball walking false. Very nice. Let's go back to Unity. We'll get rid of those error messages and add our NPC girls animator too in a second. But first let's press play. And now we can see as our old man walks, he stays facing the direction he was last facing. And when we talk to him, he pauses and faces the right way too. Cool. Now let's get our girl animated as well. So inside my sprites folder, inside Sprite Library, I'll right click, create 2D Sprite Library asset. I'll call this girl. Open my Sprite Library editor, idle, and walk. Click on idle, drag in idle. Now I don't have our walking sprites yet, so in Ninja Adventure Asset Pack, I'll go into the princess folder, separate animations, drag in walk, then in Unity, sprite mode to be multiple, pixels per unit to be 16, filter mode to be point no filter, and compression to be none. I'll click apply, sprite editor, slice, grid by cell size, 16 by 16, slice, apply. Cool, very quickly set up. And now in walk, I can drag in walk and click save. I'll go to my NPC girl GameObject. I'll add our animator and then our sprite library and our sprite resolver. Open our sprite library and drag in our girl. Then go to animation folder and drag in player into the controller. And beep bop boom, we'll get her moving. There she goes. Oh, look at her run. Beautiful. Let's try and catch her to talk to her. There she goes. She's in a rush. See ya. And she starts walking again. Very cool. We're all animated. As with any other NPC, of course. If you thought, I want to change how they look, let's make them a frog. And our old man too. Let's make them all frogs. Why not? I'll drag in our player. When we press play, we've got frogs everywhere. That's a bit silly. Okay, let's stop being silly. What's happening in the next episode? Well, these NPCs, they just keep talking to us. And we're just standing here silently. We're not saying anything back. In fact, they're not even giving us a chance to. How about some dialogue options, huh? In the next episode, we'll be adding dialogue options. So instead of being a silent little froggy, we'll start croaking some responses back. But cool, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, I'm going to remind you about our Patreon, which is only $7 a month. Helps support me a lot. Is very cheap for what I give, which is access to every single code file I've ever written. Or to skip all the hassle of putting those scripts together, you can grab this whole project, which will include all finished features and also all future updates. So grab it while it's on sale. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!